feed them with wormwood and give them poisonous water to drink. For profaneness has gone forth from the prophet of Jerusalem into all the land. You can continue to read that. I could read on and on and on and on. There is a problem that we are facing in our society today that is so pervasive until we can begin to easily recognize why we're in the shape that we're in. And sometimes God calls us to preach messages that are in the book that are not all these glowing messages that everything's going to be all right. Sometimes he has to tell us why things are wrong and why and how what we must do to get things right. As God began to talk to us through Jeremiah, he began to identify that there were some things throughout the land that was out of order, that men had turned from him and they were doing just the opposite of what he was commanding them to do. And as we would look around in America today, we would find ourselves in a similar situation. I was telling the Sunday school class this morning about a television program that I just was happening to look at. I was over to my sister's house and it was just on. It was a game show. And they asked this question. Said the question was similar, was this. I'm paraphrasing. But the question was this. How many people in America believe that living together before you got married was the proper and acceptable thing to do? And they talked about it, and some said, well, you gotta. And I was just listening to that. They said, is it 25%? Was it 50%? Or was it 75% or more? And so we sat down and we were talking about it, and we were thinking about whether or not, what is it? It's more, well, in America, when we look at America, it's more than 25%. Surely it can't be more than 50%. But then when we began to look at it, and they came back with the answer was 5% and more. Believe that it was all right. So what is happening is the moral value, the moral climate in our society is so weak until we have walked away from what God has said. And then when we walk away from God, we walk away not only from God as following his instructions, but we also walk away from being under his divine protection and guidance. And as America, that was just one instance, but we turn around and we even look at our society as we look at our government, and we find that even the highest land and the people around them are under suspicion of some kind of criminal activities from the highest level of government. And we're seeing here in Jeremiah was facing the same identical issues. And then not only that, as we go into the church, we find that there are leaders in the church who are leading people away in fornications and adultery and all kinds of things and all kinds of activities. And men have turned from God. And we are wondering why we are in the shape that we're in. We have turned from God. The prophet and the priest in Jeremiah, as he was talking, God was revealing to him about how corrupt they were. And our society is falling apart because of this corruption. I was looking at television the other day, and Ronald Reagan's son, y'all know who I'm talking about? President Ronald Reagan's son was on bragging about he was an atheist, and he wasn't afraid to go to hell. And the commercial came on several times that day, and I saw it, and I'm saying, these are the people that are influencing our children and they're being carried away by every wind and doctrine just because somebody has a name, hadn't done anything, has a name that's recognizable, and they think just because this person is prominent, they can do it like they want to, and they know something special. Looking at television again, there's a documentary coming on tonight about Scientology and how it's spreading. There are so many thoughts and ideas that are invading and permeating the minds of our people until there's so much confusion, until people don't really know what to think. The Bible talks to us about some very important things. It tells us that this God that we serve, without faith, it's impossible to please him. He said, if you come to him, you must believe that he is and that he's a rewarder to them that diligently seek him. We find that there are so many stumbling blocks that's being put in the way from our people coming to our God. One of the things that I want to just stop, first thing I want to stop and talk to us about today is I ask my question. I ask myself the question. Well, in fact, when I started reading, and we talked about this similar situation was happening in the days of Joel, where we talked about in our Sunday school lesson today. And when I began to read, the first thing I had to ask myself, see, you need to ask yourself this question: am I in the way of people coming to God? Is my lifestyle so messed up as to where I'm being a block to hinder folk from coming to the Lord? Now, I don't know what everybody thinks about me, but immediately I began to pray and ask God. So God said, if it's true in any way, turn me so that I'll be a light shining in the midst of darkness rather than a shade hiding light. And I began to ask God to move by his power, to begin to do some things in my life to make sure that I'm who I'm supposed to be. So I want to ask you, first of all, when you look at our situation and you look at where our world is going, what are you? Who are you? Are you a help or are you a hindrance? Question we all need to ask ourselves. Because God is looking for some people which are called by his name, who will humble themselves and pray and seek his face and turn from their wicked ways. God is looking for some people who will cry out, not just on their behalf, but on the behalf of the masses. God is looking for people who have compassionate hearts, who are concerned about one another. God wants to do something awesome. And let me just tell you this. You don't have to be a president, nor do you have to be a prophet. You don't have to be a priest. You don't have to be a powerful person in the world order of things. I hear him say, any, say any with me. Two of you. That doesn't mean any two presidents or any two. He said, if any, that means it includes all of us. Two of you shall touch and agree and ask anything in my name. In other words, we can change our community, we can change our family, we can change our circumstances, but we got to come together. Any two of us began to touch and agree, asking anything. He didn't say something was too hard. He said even the hard thing. He didn't say just ask the easy thing. He said ask anything. That means on all levels and scales. Say ask anything. Say anything with me. Let me tell you something. You can ask anything because there's nothing too hard for God. You can ask anything, because whatever you're going through, our God is more than enough to resolve it. I don't care how bad the situation is and who walked away from you and left you in disgust and dismay. God said if you come to him, he will in no wise cast you out. So even though our world is in such a turmoil, is in such a horrible shape, as we look at it, God is able. And I want you to know this, that the problem, let me go on just a little bit, the problem that we're dealing with is not a physical problem, it's a spiritual problem. Tell your neighbor it's a spiritual problem. If we began, the church, if we began to come together, he didn't say the world. He wasn't talking about all the nations coming together. He said if just the saints, which are called by my name, will just begin to humble themselves. See, humbling yourself is an awesome thing, because when you humble yourself, God said if you humble yourself under his mighty hand, he will exalt you in due season. So you don't have to worry about lifting yourself up or becoming strong enough to handle the problem. God is going to lift you up. And if God lifts you up, they can't pull you down. If God be for you, who can be against you? So we come together and begin to lift up one another, lift up the name of Jesus. God will lift us up. And I heard him say he will give us that authority. And we'll tread on serpents and scorpions, and not some of the enemies, but of all the enemies of this world, and nothing by any means shall hurt us. But we've got to give God a chance. And he's talking about you and I. It doesn't mean you don't have to have a title. Just being a child of God is title enough. Being a child of God, in fact, my brothers and sisters, is the highest title you can get. Because he declares you a royal priesthood, a holy nation. He declared that you are the heir and a joint heir with the King of Kings. He said that he made you to sit together in heavenly places with the King of Kings, far above all principalities, mights, and dominions, and every name that is named in this world and in the world to come. You already got power, but you just got to come together. All I'm looking for is another saint who believes, who will be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the word of the Lord. See, because I want them to somebody who believes that labor in the Lord is not in vain. And if I could just find somebody to stand with me and hold hands and touch and agree with me, we will begin to change some things in our society, in our world. Friday, people was wondering what's going to happen. They postponed it Thursday. What's going to happen? They got enough Republicans in all there to just nobody but Republicans vote for this bill. It'll pass. Trump, the President of the United States. He told them that they were going to vote tomorrow regardless. He wasn't dealing with this no more. He's going to put his foot down. And that's all he put down. Let me tell you something, saints, if you just trust God. But let me tell you, some folk were praying. Probably some of you was praying too. But some folk was praying. And it's because the effectual fervent prayer of righteous men and women availeth much. That's the reason why. But you got to keep on praying. You got to keep on showing God you love him. You got to keep on showing him that you trust him. Every one of us have got to begin to touch and agree. We got one small thing out the way right now temporarily, but it might come back again. But there are other things that's on the horizon. The enemy has not stopped because he's come but to kill, steal, and to destroy. But I hear my God saying, I've come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. I've come that you might be more than a conqueror. I've come that you might have victory. But we've got to stand together. I've gotten to the point as well, like I don't care what it is. If God says it, or don't let him wake me up in the morning. Or don't let him not let me go to sleep at night and he's talking to me. I know if God says it, and I know his voice. You've got to understand. Somebody needs to grab John 15:15 sometime. Read it, say, hey, Jesus said, when you walk with me, he said, I don't call you servants anymore. So I call you a friend. Say, when I call you a friend, say a servant don't know what his master is doing. But I call you friend because everything that the Father tells me, I'll tell you. And you've got to learn how to lay up in the midnight hour and have a little talk with Jesus. Tell him all about your trouble. He'll hear your faintest cry, and he will answer by and by. Yeah. You get that churning and that fire wheel burning, huh? He'll tell you everything you need to know. He'll give you marching orders. He'll tell you, get up in the morning and go here and do that. And don't sit there and think that you just having some kind of figment of your imagination or some kind of wild thought running. Get up and go. And you'll find